lot that we don't know, which is, again, why it's so imperative that Meadows testify, and why, this isn't just a sort of, procedural gambit. They really, really need him in there. There's this incredibly tantalizing, alarming, but also sort of ambiguous bit about the National Guard being on hand to protect pro-Trump people. It's not clear, again, it's not clear what that means. If that means that they, were kind of contemplating declaring a state of emergency, if they were preparing for some sort of unrest, if that has to do with why the National Guard took so long to get to the Capitol. We just don't know. And that is why it is so subversive of democracy for Meadows to refuse to testify. It's why it's so important that, the DOJ, I think it was probably an easier call for them to prosecute Bannon, right? Bannon's claim of executive privilege was preposterous. He wasn't in the White House. He, is also just, he'd also just been pardoned. Not that that necessarily goes into their calculations. But, Meadows has a more legitimate, actually totally legitimate government job. He, kind of has some claim probably to executive privilege. I think it is really important that the DOJ be aggressive here, because, Meadows might be a sort of more legitimate actor than Bannon, but he wasn't engaged in more legitimate politics. He was doing every bit as much as Bannon was, from what we see here, in furtherance of what was very clearly a coup attempt.
Michael?
Yeah, I think she laid it out exactly right. And it goes to the overarching narrative that both the DOJ and, Meadows and his team are now having to contemplate, and maybe in some degree recontemplate, how they're going to do this sort of ballet between both sides to get to the point that the commission ultimately is trying to get to, and that is the truth, the facts. We cannot deny there was an insurrection, right? And we know now even more so with additional evidence that there was some degree of White House involvement in that process in some way. Now, maybe it may have been benign. That's to be determined. Maybe it was much more active. Again, to be fully determined. But we know there was some level of activity that the most important figure outside of the president was involved in, and that is the chief of staff. And so the question now becomes, to Michelle's point, how do all of these pieces begin to fit to answer the very things that we don't know? And when we find that out, what does that say about the furtherance of this effort to overthrow not just the election, but ostensibly the government?
Yeah, and you both laid out, and that's why the probe is so important, even for people who want to, quote unquote, move on, to use a tired cliche. You need investigations to understand the whole picture, and the individual DOJ prosecutions, which continue apace, are and must be about the individual fact pattern in each person's case. Right. So the so-called QAnon shaman or someone else, it's about them and only them. That our justice system provides that. And yet what the Congress is doing here in this partly bipartisan committee is really try to figure out the rest of it, because there was an insurrection. It was worse than it even looked on that day, which is saying something. It was more premeditated than it may have looked on that day, and it had more coordination to the top of the government than we knew. The legal question of whether Mr. Meadows, separate from the criminal contempt, also broke other laws is similar to the questions in Georgia of whether the president at the time demanding they find 11,000 votes, does that cross the line that a prosecutor wants to charge? Not for me to say, but I can say there's mounting criminal evidence that looks really bad and needs to be dealt with. And then you have, of course, Michelle, what you know to be the most important thing, which is whether someone used a private email account. As you know, in 2016, that was a national issue in many ways. Yep. Apparently, Mr. Meadows did. The report mentioning that he used 2 private email accounts, Gmails, for personal and apparently government business, his personal cell phone as well for official business, and a secret Signal account, which is an encrypted messaging app. There's multiple references in the report here to direct communications between Meadows and the president, much of this at odds with Trump's claim that there's nothing to hide.
Well, and you remember that Meadows, said that he wasn't going to cooperate anymore because they were trying to subpoena his communications. Well, if he had secret communications, of course, they're trying to subpoena it. Obviously, the people who voted for Donald Trump because they were primarily concerned about information security are going to be very disappointed here. But there's also, I think that it's very possible that this is another violation of the law, right? There's the National Records Act. You're not allowed to to do some of this government business secretly. And so there should possibly be another criminal investigation there. But again, I think it goes to show how almost everything with Trump people, it's almost always sort of worse than it looks at first glance, which again, I think we need the investigation both in terms of to understand what happened, but also to understand what can happen in the future. Because as we've talked about a lot of times on this show, they're putting the pieces in place so that next time the Republican Party tries to dispute an electoral vote count, next time they try to get a Republican-controlled legislature to send an alternate slate of electors, they might be able to do it. And so some of what Meadows did, if it wasn't illegal, maybe it should be illegal. And so I think Congress needs to understand what happened, to understand, what sort of laws can be possibly passed to protect our elections going forward.
I think you make really important points there, Michelle, particularly with where we're headed. And we have a report that relates to some of that coming up. So I want to thank Michelle for kicking us off. As for Michael, experienced beat viewers know there's only two ways Michael comes back later in the hour: with a comic Muppet or without the Daily Show Muppet that we love so much. Today is such a serious breaking news day. Michael returns later in the hour without the Muppet, Sans Muppet. So it's that kind of day, Michael.
Yep, we're ready.
Until then, coming